Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy. Let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. These are the topics that we shall be discussing today. If you notice, topic number one, article number one is from the Indian Express. A very important article written by Professor Yogendra Yadav, The Dangers of Delimitation. This article is from the Indian Express. The remaining articles are from the Hindu newspaper. We will be focusing on four topics for prelims, and then towards the end I will also share two mains based questions for your practice. And after the class is over, I will share the PDF of the session on my Telegram group. The link to join my Telegram channel is provided in the video description. Let's get started and let's look at topic number one, the dangers of delimitation, written by Professor Yogendra Yadav. Now listen to me carefully. When it comes to delimitation, for four times in the past, we have conducted delimitation exercise because the constitution is clear. Once the census exercise is carried out, delimitation has to take place, which happened after the census of 1951, 61, 71. But then this is where the southern states protested, saying that there should be a freeze on delimitation. No more delimitation, and the number of seats should also not increase. Because the fundamental idea behind delimitation is to ensure one person, one vote, as well as one value. For example, today, Uttar Pradesh, for example, one constituency, we have 32 lakh people represented by one MP. Kerala, for example, we have 18 lakh people represented by one MP. So this disparity has to end unless and until there are other compelling reasons. For example, we have Arunachal, where we see a deviation, or for that matter, Goa, where we see a deviation where 8 lakh people are represented by one MP. And this is what we call one aspect of asymmetric federalism. And let's understand this article in great detail. Stay with me till the end. After this, you don't need to read any other lecture, any other topic, any other article on delimitation. When we say federalism, what do we mean by federalism? This term federalism is primarily derived from a Latin word fidus, which means an agreement or a treaty. For example, United States of America is considered to be the world's oldest democracy and an oldest federal polity. Why? Because there was an agreement. When the 13 erstwhile British colonies, they decided to come together and create, through an agreement, through a treaty, United States of America. But when you create a treaty, in federalism, there are two important units. There is center, or we can say union, or a federal government, and then we have states. Are states subservient to the center? No. Both center as well as states, they derive their power from the constitution. Which means in a federal polity, written constitution plays a very important role. And it is this written constitution which distributes powers. That's what we call distribution of powers. It is this written constitution which distributes powers between the center and the states. That's what we call federalism. So long story short, what is federalism? For example, in United States of America, federalism would mean that there are two units, federal government and government in every state. And they have been allocated roles and responsibilities by the constitution. So state is not subservient to the center. Center is not powerful as compared to the state because both derive their powers from a written constitution. But in India, we do not follow this type of federalism. That's what Dr. Ambedkar says, that in Article 1, Clause 1 of the Constitution, we say India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Dr. Ambedkar said, despite the fact that we are a federal polity, but I've used the term union of states and not federation of states because of two reasons, which you would know, that India is not the result of an agreement between states. States or the Union of India was not created because the states got into an agreement to create the Union of India. And second, no state has the right to secede from the Union of India. In India, we say our federalism is mostly holding together federalism. This is where Professor Yogendra Yadav also mentions this term. Hence, I need a little time to elaborate on this holding together of federalism. What does that mean? India is a diverse country. And this diversity is not only in terms of caste or religion, it's also in terms of language, the cultural diversity that we see in India. And India is geographically vast as well. So, a country such as India, it resorts to federalism, it adopts federalism, not because of any other reason, but to hold the states and the union together. Because otherwise, if we do not respect the states, if we do not allocate responsibilities to the states, if we don't recognize the states as they are, then we might see the balkanization of this country. The union may not stay together. So, countries such as India, which are geographically vast, and which are culturally diverse as well, they resort to federalism for their own survival because otherwise the nation will not survive. That is why there is distribution of powers. There is dual government, government at the center, government in every state. Distribution of powers provided under the seventh schedule of the Constitution, where center has its own role, states have their own role as well. That's federalism, holding together federalism that we see in India. But Indian federalism is not symmetric, where all the states are treated equally. There are some states which are treated differently. For example, there is a special status provided to various states under Article 371 of the Constitution, which means our Constitution is not, our federalism is not symmetric, but it is asymmetric. Similarly, when we say one person, one vote, one value, what does that mean? That means after the census exercise is carried out, which will tell us what is the population of this country, and according to that, we will assign seats to individual states based upon population, which means the higher the population, higher the share of that state would be in the parliament. Because in every state, we have to respect one person, one value, one vote, which means if today 32 lakh people are represented by one MP in UP, but 18 lakh are represented by one MP in Kerala, and 8 lakh are represented by one MP in Arunachal or Goa. What does that mean? That means the value of a vote of an individual in Arunachal is more than the value of a vote of an individual in UP. For that, we need delimitation exercise, which was, as I told you, conducted three times initially: 1951 census, 1961 census, 1971 census. Delimitation was carried out in 1973, but then we saw increase in the number of seats more for northern India as compared to the southern India. And southern India protested, saying you are incentivizing the non performing or bad performing northern states because they have failed to control the population. And you are disincentivizing good performing southern states because we have been in a position to effectively control our population. So because of our good performance, you are penalizing us by giving us lesser number of seats in the Lok Sabha, which means we will lose our voice in the parliament, which is the temple of India's democracy. Indira Gandhi was the prime minister. Delimitation was stopped for the next few decades. It was carried out in 2002. But in 2002 also it was said that there won't be any increase in the number of seats till the census after 2026. When is the next census after 2026 scheduled? Ideally, because the census is carried out every 10 years. So ideally, it should have been scheduled in 2031. But you know, the census of 2021 was delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Allegation now is that maybe, I don't know, maybe the central government is deliberately delaying census so that the census is conducted next year, which means this constitutional mandate that only after the census figures after 2026 are published, you can go for delimitation. Which means if the census is carried out next year, which means we have the census figures, population figures available, which means after that you can carry out delimitation. Which means this delimitation, which ideally could have been carried out after 2031, can be carried out for 2029 elections. This is where the southern states, particularly Tamil Nadu, is vociferous against it, calling for a temporary ban on delimitation for the next 30 years. But Professor Yogendra Yadav says, not for the next 30 years, freeze it forever. Freeze it forever. And why? That is where this topic becomes very, very important. Beautiful article written by Professor Yogendra Yadav. Why? Professor Yogendra Yadav says when we look at delimitation, there are two aspects to delimitation. And when it comes to one aspect, nobody has a problem. What is that aspect? For example, when in 2002 delimitation was carried out, what was the purpose? The purpose was simple. For example, this is a state where we have 4 constituents. Ideally, one person, one vote, one value would say that 1 million should be represented by one legislator, 1 million by one legislator, 1 million by one legislator, 1 million by one legislator, for example. And this was done based on 1971 census. After that, delimitation was not carried out, which means after the census of 81, after the census of 91, after the census of 2001, we may have seen increase in the population. But this population increase may not have been even. It may have been an uneven increase in the population, which means maybe here now the population is 10 million. Here the population is 7 million. Here the population is, let's say, 3 million. Here the population is 4 million. Now in total we have 24 million population, which ideally would mean we needed 24 MPs, legislators from this state. But we can't increase the number of seats. The number of seats have to remain the same, has to remain the same. So for that, what we will do, we will reorganize these constituencies in such a manner that in every constituency, there are 6 million people represented by one legislator. Remember, overall seats will not increase. The seats will remain the same. But constituencies internally will be reorganized in such a manner that in every constituency within the state, there would be one person, one value, one vote would be recognized. That's why it was carried out in 2002. And in 2002, it was also carried out so that the number of seats reserved for SCs and STs could increase. Total number of seats will remain the same, but the number of seats reserved for SCs and STs would see an increase in proportion to their population. Yogendra Yadav says, when it comes to this aspect of delimitation, nobody has a problem. Which means you carry out internal delimitation like the one you carried out in 2002. You also increase the number of MLAs in every legislative assembly. Nobody has a problem. Will Tamil Nadu has a problem? Have a problem if the number of MLAs to Tamil Nadu legislative assembly would be increased, or for that matter, Telangana or Andhra Pradesh or Karnataka? No. So it is this aspect of delimitation which nobody would have a problem to. But the other aspect of delimitation is if it leads to an increase in the number of seats in Lok Sabha. This is where the states will lose their. For example, Milan Vaishnav and Jamie Hinston, they have conducted a study. And according to that study, if we use the existing population as a criteria, to reorganize the boundaries, keeping the Lok Sabha strength as same 543. If we do not increase in the number of seats in the Lok Sabha, if we keep it the same, but assign these seats in proportion to the population, according to the population, then southern states would be at a disadvantage. Tamil Nadu will lose 8 seats. Karnataka will lose 2. Andhra Pradesh and Telangana combined will lose 8 seats. Odisha will also lose seats. Similarly, northern states, for example, Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, these two states will lose their seats. But apart from that, Bihar, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, these Hindi speaking states will gain massively. Currently, for example, if they account for 229 seats out of 543, are you able to follow me? If they account for 229 seats out of 543, tomorrow, after delimitation, they will account for 259 seats. Today, they account for 226 seats out of 543. After delimitation, they will account for 259 seats, which means almost a majority. Majority is at 272. So these northern states will gain majority. So what Professor Yogendra Yadav says, freeze this number. And for that, we need a federal compact. And what is this federal compact? Let me take you back to what we discussed previously. I told you that we do not follow the kind of federalism that United States follows. Federalism in a sense that it got created through a treaty or an agreement. So there was no agreement amongst the states to create a federal polity in India. But now Yogendra Yadav says it is time that we have this agreement. Although this agreement is not mentioned originally, but we need this agreement now. Why? Because this is something which our constitution makers did not and could not have foreseen. Because otherwise, it will have a danger of ripping apart this country, according to Yogendra Yadav. Why? Because Professor Yogendra Yadav says that we have had 3 fault lines in India. One was cultural. The second was economic. And the third one was political. Cultural fault line between Hindi speaking and non-Hindi speaking population. The original idea of the constitution was that Hindi should be the only official language of this country. But this is where the southern states, non-Hindi speaking states, they protested. And ultimately it led to a compromise in the form of Official Languages Act, which makes both Hindi as well as English as the official language of the Union. And there is no such thing as the national language of India. And then states were reorganized in the name of language. That is how we saw linguistic realignment, rearrangement, reorganization of Indian states. So that was fault line number 1, cultural. Second was economic. Ironically, those states which are at the receiving end of the Hindi domination, economically, they are at an advantage. Look at the southwest states in India. These are the states which are more developed as compared to the northern states, as compared to the Hindi speaking states. So one fault line is Hindi, non-Hindi. Another fault line is economic. Some prosperous, some poor. And some were referred to as Bimaru states as well. And the third fault line, according to Yogendra Yadav, is political. For example, after the coming of BJP into power in 2014 with a massive mandate, and then again in 2019, then with a reduced mandate in 2024, but BJP is a dominant political force. And Yogendra Yadav says the idea of the BJP is that it is also dominant in the Hindi heartland. So if it controls the Hindi heartland, thereby it controls the entire country. which means ideally if southern states and western states or eastern states could have come together to block a constitutional amendment now, they cannot do that after delimitation because they will lose their voice. And Yogendra Yadav says now there may be a fourth fault line in the form of delimitation. And then what is the solution? The solution, according to Professor Yogendra Yadav, is freeze the number in Lok Sabha. Let there be no increase whatsoever. You can reorganize these seats internally so that in every constituency we follow one person, one value, one vote. But states should not lose their share in the Lok Sabha. And for that, we need this federal compact. This federal compact would be something very, very important, very, very interesting. And what is that very, very interesting compact? One is, I'll write it down here, representation based on population and contribution based share in federal resource. Because a federal compact would also involve give and take. Today, southern states are demanding two things, which according to Yogendra Yadav may not be right. Right in the sense, you can't say that on the basis of we controlling our population, there should be no increase in the number of seats. Because controlling the population is a different matter altogether, is a different contributing factor altogether. For that, state should not take their credit. Why? Because it's a cultural thing and it is also an economic thing. Once your economy develops, which means women will have more agency over her reproductive self, which means if she is more educated, more premium is paid to education and development, there will be less population increase. So population stabilization has got nothing to do with the state being successful in controlling the population. It is the success of the people, because once they have developed economically, they will also control the size of their family. If the economic development would have taken place in the northern India the way it has done in the southern India, northern India would also have been effective in controlling the population. So southern states today are asking for freeze for 30 years. Yogendra Yadav says freeze forever. But southern states are also demanding something else, that we should not get share from the divisible pool of taxes by the Finance Commission based on population, but based on what? Your contribution to the tax revenue. Yogendra Yadav says we need this federal compact so that population should not determine your representation in Lok Sabha, and your contribution to tax revenue should not determine your share in the federal resources. This is where southern states would be at an advantage. This is where northern states would be at an advantage. And ultimately, it will be a win-win situation for both. And ultimately, this is what will lead to what Partha Chatterjee would call a just republic. Partha Chatterjee, the political scientist, anthropologist as well, not the Partha Chatterjee, the politician who was in the jail. Partha Chatterjee, political scientist, he would say that we need a just republic. And the just republic would be if neither your population would determine your share in the seats in the Lok Sabha, nor will your contribution to the tax revenue determine your share in the federal resource. That completes our discussion on article number 1. Okay. Let's look at another topic, miles to go. There's a crisis in Manipur, primarily between two communities, the Métis and the Kukis. Métis, who dominate the valley, inhabit the valley in large numbers, and cookies who dominate the hills. Such was the violence which was perpetrated between these two communities that it led to loss of hundreds of lives, thousands of public property was destroyed, burned down, and it also led to massive displacement. Then, according to this article, the editorial written in the Hindu newspaper, something good happened, something good in the form of the Biren Singh government was removed, resigned, and since no other government was possible, because according to this editorial, the BJP could not come up with one face who can be the face of the government because there are ethnic divisions within the BJP as well. That is why the only alternative left was the president's rule. Between Metis and cookies, between hills and the valley, we see as if some form of partition has taken. That means Metis are inhabiting the valley and they don't dare go out of their territory. Similarly, cookies, they dominate the hills and they don't dare venture out of their territory. Otherwise, there will be clashes. What the central government has done, it has decided to implement a free movement. Let there be free movement of people and goods from hills to valley, from valley to hills. And this would also ensure that the preambular objective of fraternity is respected, upheld. But the problem is that hills, the cookies, they practiced an economic blockade because they control the access to the valley and they blocked access to goods, commodities, which caused inflation and also economic distress in the valley. And it is argued that valley people also implemented some form of blockade against the cookies as well. But this free movement regime would have played a very important role in breaking this ice. Unfortunately, we have witnessed violence. One person was killed, 40 others were injured. That is problem number. Problem number two, close to 3,000 weapons. Weapons which belong to the state, weapons which belong to the police, the paramilitary troops. These weapons were stolen by the insurgents. Because how are you able to control this narrative? You have insurgents with the weapons stolen from the police and the paramilitary troops, and they are causing violence. Appeal was given by the central government that you surrender these weapons, but only one third of these weapons are missing. More weapons are missing, which ideally should have been confiscated by the state or surrendered by the insurgents. So one problem is with the free movement regime, which started between hills and the valley. Please remember, this is not the free movement regime where people are allowed to freely move, cross the border, and go to Mizoram. And from Mizoram, you can come to India. This is not that free movement regime. It's the free movement of people and goods from the hills to the valley and vice versa. This has come under attack because of the clashes that took place, which led to the death of one individual and 40 others got injured. And also the demand by the state that you please return and surrender those weapons which you have looted from the police. This has not met with the success either. And this editorial says we need a message from the central government to these insurgents that only the state has the right to wield a weapon. Only the state has the right to wield an arms and ammunition, not the insurgents. That has to happen. And at the same time, cookies are demanding a UT status, which this editorial says is unjustified. Because in these hilly areas, there are Nagas as well. And for Nagas, UT is not a solution. For Nagas, they are not claiming a UT status. So all these illegitimate demands of a UT status and these weapons which have been confiscated, which have been looted, should be brought back, and allowing the free movement, and then ensuring So civil society should play a larger role in maintaining ties, talking to each other, so that this violence, this ethnic violence comes to an. That's the crux of this edit. Clear? Okay. Then let's look at another column, the Indian University and the search for a vice chancellor. The year was 1857 when the British inaugurated and set up three universities. One was in Calcutta, the other was in Bombay, and the other was in Madras. These were the three universities which were set up by the British in 1857. And what the British did, the governors of these provinces were made chancellors of these universities so that the British can still exercise control over these universities. And then these chancellors would appoint the vice chancellors and would also employ or appoint the university executive. And it is this university executive which is responsible for the day-to-day administration of the university, a very powerful group. Which means even then the center, or which means the British, will have the control over these universities and how they will function. After the enactment of the constitution, after India got independence, the state legislatures which created these universities, new universities, state universities were created. They followed the same model without any thinking, which means it is the state legislature which, through its laws, creates state universities. And then they also followed the old practice of having governors appointed as the chancellors, and then these governors appointing vice chancellors and the university executive. And this is where we have seen the tussle between the governors and the chief ministers, particularly in states which are ruled by the opposition, because the governor is the nominee of the central government, the ruling political party at the center. For example, we have had such issues in Tamil Nadu, we have had such issues in Kerala as well. For example, in Kerala, the Kerala Legislative Assembly passed a bill replacing governor as a chancellor with the chief minister. The then governor Arif Mohammad Khan of Kerala reserved this bill for the consideration of the president. And in February last month, the president withheld her assent. She publicly declared that I'm not going to sign this bill. Which bill? Which tried to replace governor with the chief minister as the chancellor of the state universities. So that's issue number one. Issue number two, University Grants Commission. This law was passed in 1956. And the purpose of the law was to set up this University Grants Commission to ensure that the quality and the standard of university education is maintained, uplifted, upgraded. And it is this UGC Act which talks about UGC guidelines. And it is these UGC draft guidelines of 2025 which has sparked controversy because of two things. Now listen to me carefully. UGC has released these guidelines previously as well, 2018, 2014, prior to that as well. But this time the guidelines have been changed. The draft guidelines are put up for public opinion. That means the government wants, the UGC wants, the ministry wants public involvement in these guidelines so that you can suggest some recommendations. We will try and incorporate those suggestions and recommendations. A couple of months ago, there was an article written in the Hindu newspaper by P. Achari, former Secretary General of the Lok Sabha. What he said these UGC guidelines regarding the appointment of Vice Chancellor and the requirements of the Vice Chancellor These are primarily unconstitutional. Why? Because these UGC guidelines are based upon, or should we call them, subordinate legislation. What is subordinate legislation? Parliament enacts a law, but to implement this law, we need rules. These rules are made by the bureaucrats, by the bureaucracy. We call it subordinate legislation. But can these rules violate the parent law? No, because these rules have to be in agreement with the law passed by the legislature. PDT Acharya says UGC Act primarily talks about setting the standard of university education, prescribing the qualification for university professors, teaching credit, how the recruitment of teachers and non-teaching staff has to take place. This act does not talk about appointment of the vice chancellor or the conditions of the vice chancellor. So when the act does not talk about the appointment of the vice chancellor, how can these subordinate rules, subordinate legislation talk about an aspect which is not covered by the parent law, which is not covered by the parent act, parent legislation? But be that as it may, it is this draft guideline which has caused controversy because of two things. One, the requirement of the vice chancellor. Previously, the requirement was ever has had rich experience of research, has been a professor of more than 10 years, and has had an experience in research. This person is qualified to be appointed as the vice chancellor of a university. So, who is qualified to be appointed as the vice chancellor of a university? If you have been a professor with 10 years experience, or if you have been a researcher with 10 years experience, you are qualified to be appointed as the vice chancellor. Now the draft says you can also have an experience in industry. If you are an experienced professional in the industry, you can also be appointed as the vice chancellor of a university. This is where some people are in favor, some people are against. Those who are against, they say, would you tomorrow support an academician becoming the chief executive officer, the CEO of a well established company, corporate entity? So, when you cannot accept an academician becoming the CEO of a company, how can we ensure and accept that CEO of a company is tomorrow eligible to be appointed as the vice chancellor of a university? But those who support this change, for example, the writer, who is the vice chancellor of Kerala Agricultural University, he says this vice chancellor's role today is dynamic. Yes, you can be an academician as well, but at the same time, if you have been an industry leader, you can be an asset to a university because, in the words of Amanda Goodall, she says that it is not enough that a VC is modeled along the Socrates, who is only involved and mostly involved and absorbed in deep thought. We need somebody who, apart from being a researcher, apart from being an intellectual or an academician, can be a well known in the industry so that you can understand industry academics collaboration. So, a new lens has to be created to see the university requirements today, because you can't ensure that university remains fossil along the patterns of the old. We have to reinvent and reimagine our universities, and for that, if we can have a dynamic industry veteran who can be the vice chancellor of a university, maybe he will give a different direction to a university which is required as per the industry requirements. So both have its own pros and cons. Some are opposing it, some are accepting it. But then the problem bigger is with the appointment of the vice chancellor. Appointment of the vice chancellor in the sense, for example, we have a state university and we have a central university. There, who will appoint the vice chancellor of a state university? For that, we need search cum selection committee. This search cum selection committee will propose 5 names, and these names should be sent to the chancellor, and the chancellor will appoint one person from this list as the vice chancellor of that university. Similarly, the search and selection committee will prepare a list, give it to the visitor of central university, because central universities have a visitor, and then the visitor will appoint the vice chancellor. The chancellor of a state university is the governor. The visitor of a central university is the president of India. The Supreme Court and the courts in this country, they have categorically stated that you can have no role of the executive in this process, whether it is the state executive or the union executive at the center. Because this search cum selection committee, who will be part of this committee? One person will be nominated by the chancellor. One person will be nominated by the UGC. And one person will be nominated by the university executive, the executive board of the university. If there is no role of the state executive, this is where some states say it is problematic for us. For example, Telangana. For example, Andhra Pradesh. For example, Tamil Nadu. For example, Kerala. Tamil Nadu most vociferously. Tamil Nadu says, these state universities are established by the laws passed by the state legislature. Look at our Anna University. Look at our Bharatiyar University. These are the best performing universities according to NIRF rankings released by the central government. In fact, out of the 50 top universities in India, 10 are from the Tamil Nadu. These 10 are the state universities. Which basically means that if the state legislature has enacted laws to establish these universities, and now state has no role in the appointment of the vice chancellor, this is problematic. But consistently, the Supreme Court has upheld the removal of the state executive from this appointment process, because you want to insulate the appointment of the vice chancellor, because vice chancellor is considered to be an individual who has an ultimate control over the universities. He may even enforce a curfew inside the university. Such an important power is given to the vice chancellor. And we want to insulate this individual from the state control, from the executive control. Similarly, at the central university level, it is not the union ministry, it is not the union government which will have a say. Because in central universities also, the search and selection committee will be consisting of the members. One will be nominated by the visitor, the other will be nominated by the UGC. Central government, union executive will have no say here. But states say it is different in case of central universities, because the president always abides by the aid and advice of the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. So there is always an influence of the union government in the appointment of vice chancellors to the central university. But in states which are ruled by the opposition, where the governor and the chief minister, they are not in conformity with each other, this is where there is a conflict. And this is where this article says we may have an option, we may have a compromise. What is the alternative? Can we say one option is that university executive will recommend somebody to this search cum selection committee, which is a unanimous choice of the state government as well? So state government directly will not have a say in appointment of a member to the search and selection committee. But can we ensure that university executive, when it will nominate someone to this search committee, this person will be a consensus candidate of the state government as well? Or if that is not the case, can we have UGC, when it is recommending nominating somebody to this search committee, can UGC consult the state government and nominate someone to this search committee, which is after consultation with the state government? And obviously, who is this person going to be? He should not be somebody who is the employee of the state government. He should not be under the direct control of the state government. But maybe he can be an independent researcher, a professor with 10 years experience, worthy of being appointed as a vice chancellor. So this person can be nominated to this search committee by the UGC with consultation of the state government, or can be nominated to this committee by the university executive, and this person should be the unanimous candidate of the state government as well. This is how the compromise can be reached according to that. Completes yet another topic. Now we have fourth topic: flawed food regulations fuel the obesity crisis. Now, what's the issue? Prime Minister Modi has said that we need to tackle obesity. 2025 economic survey says something else. 25% of adult men and women are obese in India. 25% are also suffering from, let's say, diabetes, or some of them are pre-diabetic. And this is according to National Family Health Survey 5. So obesity is a challenge because obesity can also be linked to various other lifestyle diseases, for example, diabetes, hypertension, and others. In India, obesity is not a public failure, it is a policy failure. We have a large amount of our population which is in the age group of 25 to 35 or 18 to 35. That is what we call demographic dividend. This demographic dividend can turn into demographic nightmare if we have the adult population which is obese, suffering from lifestyle diseases as well, which means they will not be able to contribute significantly to India's growth, economic growth, cultural growth. And at the same time, it will be a drain on their money because they will have to spend a lot of their money on hospitalization and medical expenses, which is where insurance will not be covering all these ailments, which means out of the pocket expenditure will increase. Ultimately, it is not a good sign for India's growth and development. But the issue is that it is not public failure, it is the policy failure. Why policy failure? The food which is supplied to India, the food that you and me consume. For example, if you buy a packet of Lay's in India, it uses palm oil, which is dangerous, unhealthy. But if you buy this Lay's packet in Europe or Middle East, it does not use palm oil. They use healthy variants of other oils. In 2015, there was a controversy regarding Nestle's Maggie, that it contains high amounts of MSG, which is addictive as well, according to some experts. But you won't find these allegations in a Maggie which is sold in Europe or Middle East. Even the food that is given to babies, the baby food, we say babies should be kept out of sugar contamination for at least 2 years. But baby food which is given, the formula milk which is given, it contains sugar in India, while as it does not contain sugar in Middle East and other European countries or in United States. So is the problem because of the public failure? No, it is the policy failure because the policy has failed to ensure that we are supplying good quality content, uh, good quality components to Indians. Because the policy failure is that we are allowing substandard food items to be sold, distributed, and advertised in India. For example, we have been using since 2022 the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. It implemented something called Health Star labeling. Health Star labeling, just like we follow in Australia. For example, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, 5 star. So if you are buying a product, you can look at the rating of this product and ultimately decide whether it is healthy for me or unhealthy for me, which means 5 makes it healthy, 1 makes it entirely unhealthy. Just like we use this star system for our appliances. For example, refrigerator, washing machine. What is the star rating? Which means the amount of electricity that it will consume, so that there is a less electricity bill provided to you. This, the writer says, is problematic because this health star system failed in Australia. It will fail in India as well. Why? Because it does not capture the food. Why? Let's say, for example, morning cornflakes. It is high in sugar. It is high in sodium. So marketed as a healthy breakfast, muesli, cornflakes, chocos. These are not healthy. These are unhealthy things. High in sugar content, high in sodium as well. But cornflakes would have 3 star rating. So you might be made to believe that cornflakes is healthy because it has a 3 star. It is not 5 star, but it is 3 star, so I will consume it. Then, sir, what is the alternative? The alternative is something that we see in traffic signal. Traffic signal in the sense, this is green, that means it is healthy. This is orange, which means you have to avoid it. This is red, which means complete no, don't take it. Absolutely horrible, unhealthy. Make it clear to the customer that this is the choice for you. This is green, this is orange, this is red. Don't give it star rating 1, 2, 3 star, which means star rating makes it acceptable for a consumer. For example, you have food which is high in fat, salt, and sugar, and UPF, ultra processed foods. These ideally should have been under red, but they have 3 star, 2 star as well, which means they might give a sense that they are acceptable. That's the problem with this rating system. The another problem is with advertisement. Advertisement in the sense, there was a video viral recently where Tiger Shroff, some other female actor, they refused cake because they were celebrating somebody's birthday, but they refused the cake. And then the same set of actors would advertise soft drinks, other ultra processed food, which they would not consume themselves, but they will ask you to consume because they are the brand ambassadors. Why? Because advertisements in India are banned if they are misleading. Now, if you fail to display in the advertisement what is the pesticide content in your soft drink, that you have 8 spoons of sugar in one soft drink, and how toxic it is, how unhealthy it is, and how are we making our future generation obese? If you fail to disclose this information, it is not misleading according to our laws. Misleading would be if you say that the soft drink would cure cancer or asthma. That would be misleading. But hiding the details in the advertisement about the content of calories inside that bottle, that is not misleading advertisement at all. Which means we need change in our laws related to advertising. That's number one. Number two, imagine it this way. If all the information, whether this food is green, orange, or red, which means healthy or dangerous? Shouldn't it be displayed on the front side of a food packet so that it is more discernible? That's another reform that we require. Third, can we not ensure that there is a health tax, something which is proposed by the economic survey, something that is followed in Singapore, for example? There should be more tax on McD burger, on Domino's pizza, more on Burger King or whatever king they are. More tax so that we are making it less affordable to the people. And look at the sociology behind the burger. This burger will have bun, then inside it will have a tikki, then it will have a cauliflower, it will have salad like items. Basically, a replica of the mother's tiffin, because mother will give you a roti, will give you some dal, will give you some uh, salad as well. All that is disregarded and made into one burger, which is unhealthy for you. So there should be a health tax on that. Plus, why can't we ensure that even if it's a matter of choice as well, even if somebody wants to drink these beverages, soft drinks, but they should be displayed at the back in grocery shops or supermarkets, so that as you enter the supermarket, your eyes will go on healthy foods. The unhealthy foods, they should be kept at the back, away from the public visibility, so that you have to search for it and then get it. Right now, they are easily accessible right in front of you, staring at your eyes, and you have no other option but to grab it. Another factor is the capitalist idea of making people buy more by making everything visible. Otherwise, previously, you would go to a Kiryana shop and you already had prepared a list of items that you wanted to buy. I need this shampoo, I need this soap, I need this toothpaste, I need this brush. That's it. And then you go. But today, enter a supermarket and you end up buying what you did not even intend to buy. So consumerism is promoted by the new capitalist ideas. But be that as it may, the point is, how do we make Indians healthier and fitter? For that, we need to ensure that there is a proper labeling of food items. Rating system does not work according to the writer. What we need is a traffic signal kind of red, green, and orange. Similarly, we need laws related to misleading advertisements put in place effectively. Why can't there be a ban? There is a ban on the marketing and advertisement of alcohol. There is a ban on the advertisement on cigarettes. There should be a ban on the advertisement of these unhealthy products as well. Now, there is another way you can bypass that ban. For example, Royal Stag soda, Kingfisher soda, or Royal Stag music CD. This amounts to surrogate advertising, because you can't advertise the liquor products directly. So you do it indirectly by having, there are some companies which manufacture glass items and then they promote glass items. But people know this is not a glass item advertisement, this is the advertisement for their alcoholic beverage. That is what we call surrogate advertising. So we need stricter laws around surrogate advertising as well. We need to ensure that there is a ban on the advertisement of soft drinks and other unhealthy products. There should be a front side labeling of all the important information. Health tax should be imposed, and all these unhealthy items should be at the end, at the far end of these supermarkets. Okay, great. This is the summary of this article. This will be part of the PDF that I will share on the group. Let's now look at some of the films based topics. First one, Lalit Modi's Vanuatu passport to be cancelled. Now, Vanuatu, it has a extremely popular citizenship by investment or golden passport program. You give us 1 to 1.2 to 1.8 crore rupees and you can get the citizen. And according to Henley's passport index, it is one of the powerful passports in the world because it has visa free 111 countries. Lalit Modi decided to renounce his citizenship. One aspect of this, for example, this was an unstarred question asked in the Lok Sabha by a member of the parliament. And the question was, how many Indians are renouncing their citizenship year on year? Because Citizenship Act of 1955, it allows citizens to renounce your citizenship, but you can't renounce your citizenship act of war, but you can renounce your citizenship. That's how yearly lakhs of Indians are giving up their citizenship. For example, in 2023, this number is 260,000. In 2020, it was 220. You don't have to remember these numbers, but just understand the pattern that there are lakhs of people every year who voluntarily give up their Indian citizenship, renounce their citizenship. There is another aspect that you have to. How does the government of India react to this renunciation? Does government of India consider the act of renunciation as something that we should be ashamed of? The government of India considers this as an asset. Because this question, this unstarred question, because you know the unstarred question means that the answer to this question should be in a written format. So the Minister of State for External Affairs gave a written response and said the question also asked what are the reasons why Indians are giving up their citizenship? And the government reply said the reasons are personal. But we also need to understand that these people who will go to other countries and take the citizenship in these countries, they will become an important part of our. They will also become part of India's diaspora. And this diaspora can become our asset. So, one, lakhs of people every year renounce Indian citizenship voluntarily. Second, the government of India does not consider this act of renunciation as what? As a threat or as something that we should be ashamed of, but it considers this as an asset. That's number two. But Lalit Modi's passport, the government in Vanuatu has now said that we will cancel this passport because we have a strict condition. You should not be evading the law. You should not be acquiring the citizenship of our country because you are fearing arrest in another country. That's what we will not allow, and that's why his passport may be cancelled. But regarding Vanuatu, there are some important details, particularly in geography, that can be important for your exam. For example, Vanuatu, it has 83 small volcanic islands, but not all these volcanic islands are inhabited. There are only 65 which are inhabited. But if you look at Vanuatu, you will see that it lies to the east of Australia and to the north of New Zealand. And this Vanuatu, it has several active volcanoes. Another important thing is some of these active volcanoes, they are under the water as well. There are underwater active volcanoes as well. While studying geography, you may have read about Tombuk eruption, which happened in this area, Vanuatu. And it is this Tombuk eruption which destroyed one island in Vanuatu, and it led to the formation of two smaller islands, Epi and Tongo. But why this Tombuk eruption is very important? Because scientists say that this eruption is linked to sulfates in the atmosphere. And is there any evidence of this? In polar ice, you will see that these sulfates have been trapped. And that is what led to the period of global cooling. This is an important aspect related to Vanuatu for geography, can be important for your exam. Portuguese explorer Pedro Fernandes de Queiro visited Vanuatu in 1606, and he became the first European to enter Vanuatu, to reach the coast of Vanuatu. But then he also thought that these inhabitants in Vanuatu, they are hostile to him. That's when others did not try to reach Vanuatu again. But then in 1764, British explorer James Cook, he was the one who went to Vanuatu and then called it New Hebrides, because there is Hebrides in Scotland. New Hebride, new set of islands were these islands, volcanic islands of Vanuatu. But one more important thing, this Vanuatu in 1906, France and UK decided that we will administer these islands together. And that is what we call condominium, which means a system where two countries or two entities are controlling the same land, same entity. But then this process, this model broke in 1980 when independence was declared, and this New Hebrides was renamed as Vanuatu. What is in the news? Vanuatu because of Lalit Modi. For that, we need to understand that there are some countries which have citizenship by money as one process of acquiring citizenship. Wealthy individuals, you have money, buy citizenship. Something that Donald Trump also envisaged for United States, called Golden Visa. If Vanuatu is in the news, we also need to understand some of the geographical phenomena associated. That's number one. Number two, India is the second largest arms importer after Ukraine, says SIPRI. What is SIPRI? Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. It is an international independent institute. That means governments are not part of it. It's an international independent institute set up in Sweden, the capital of Sweden, Stockholm. This is where the headquarters of this institute is. And it was established in 1960. These facts are important, can be asked in your prelims examination. And what is the purpose of SIPRI? What it basically does, it takes a look at the different conflicts happening in the world. Not just conflicts happening in the world, it also takes a look at the armaments, the arms which are being imported and exported by countries. Are there some countries which are giving up arms, adopting disarmament, for example? Whether is there a control over this arms race? All that independent research is conducted by SIPRI, and then SIPRI shares its details with the media so that there is a wider public awareness about these issues. And according to this recent report, Ukraine has become the largest importer of major arms. Which period is considered? 2020 to 2024. Who is the second largest arms importer? India. India is the biggest arms export destination for both Russia as well as France. Traditionally, we would import a large amount of our weapons from Russia, but now significantly this number has reduced. Although we are in the process of getting, we have also got some S-400 missile defense system considered to be the best in the world from Russia. And this is where United States CAATSA comes into the picture. CAATSA is Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. It is through this law that United States penalizes those countries which conduct transactions of significant nature with United States adversaries. And which are the adversaries of United States? North Korea, Iran, and Russia. And whoever is carrying out business of significant transaction with Russia, sanctions will be imposed. That's how against Turkey, against China, sanctions. So fact that you have to keep in mind is that our dependence on arms import from Russia has reduced. China significantly has dropped out of the list of top 10 arms importers for the first time. Which means what? Which means now China is increasingly manufacturing these arms domestically. That means it is not now overtly reliant on import of arms. It is manufacturing it on it. That's something that we need to in India. And if these are the importers, which are the top exporters? United States continues to be at the top. Now Russia, which used to be at two, serial number two, has been replaced by France. France is at number. These facts can be important for exam. Topic number 3, prelims based. Calcutta High Court Judge Leymalya Bagchi elevated to the top court. Now you know that in India we follow a system of collegium system of judicial appointment, where something which is recommended by the collegium is acceptable to the president. The president is bound to accept the recommendations of the collegium. And it is this collegium which will recommend to the president that appoint these persons as the judge of the Supreme Court. And normally what happens, there is a seniority list. This is the all India ranking of seniority of the High Court judges, of the High Court Chief Justices. Whoever is the senior most is normally appointed to the Supreme Court on the recommendations of the collegium. But Justice Bagchi, he was at serial number 11 in terms of the seniority. Yet he was recommended and elevated to the Supreme Court. Why? Although we don't know, listen to me carefully, although we don't know why and how they considered somebody to be appointed as a judge. What is the collegium thinking? What do they evaluate? How do they judge the candidate? We don't know. But there are some things that we know is that this collegium follows seniority list, but not every time. Sometimes they may deviate as well. And what else do they consider? They consider regional representation. This can be important statement for your prelims. Does collegium, while recommending names to the president for judicial appointments, consider regional representation? Why? Because the collegium said that Justice Bagchi is from the Calcutta High Court. And the last time we had somebody from the Calcutta High Court assume the top office of the Chief Justice of India was Justice Kabir, Altamas Kabir, in 2013. That is why we need regional representation, so that next person, there should be someone else from Calcutta High Court to be the Chief Justice of India as well. And that is why Justice Bagchi is going to be the Chief Justice 2031. And currently we have only one judge from the Calcutta High Court, Justice Debankar Datta. So to fulfill and accept this regional representation, that is why the collegium recommended Justice Bagchi, despite the fact that he was at serial number 11 in terms of seniority. Lok Sabha to discuss President's rule in Manipur, approve budget. Now, we have discussed that President's rule was imposed in Manipur, but you would also know that once this President's rule is proclaimed, then within 2 months, both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha, they will have to approve this President's rule by passing a resolution by simple majority. And that is what is going to be taken up by the Lok Sabha. And then it will go to Rajya Sabha. That's number one. Number two, when Manipur is under President's rule, there are all the states in India which are passing their respective budgets. What about the budget for Manipur? That will be presented by the Union Finance Minister. Because now it is the responsibility of the Union to get the budget for Manipur passed in the Parliament. Because during the President's rule, Parliament acts as the state legislature. This is fact number 2. Fact number 3, that this article also talks about demands for access grants for 2020, 2021, 2022. What is this demand for access grants? Money has been allocated to the executive, to the ministry by the Parliament during the budget. This is the amount of money that you have to spend. What if you end up spending more than what was allocated to you? And how can you spend more? Maybe you are withdrawing money from contingency fund and spending. Maybe you are resorting to borrowing. But you have spent in excess of what was allocated to you by the parliament. After the financial year is over, you can get this excess grant approved by the parliament. But how? For that, the approval of the Public Accounts Committee is necessary. So now the parliament is also going to discuss these demands for excess grants for 2021 2022. And when it is presented before the parliament, what this demand says is that we have accrued this amount. You don't have to remember this amount, just understand the concept that excess expenditure was incurred. And we are also telling you the reason why we have incurred this excess expenditure. And then this excess was also scrutinized by the PAC. And the PAC has accepted, regularized this expenditure, saying, okay, please go ahead and get it approved by the parliament, get it regularized by the parliament. So excess grants after the financial year is over has to be examined by the Public Accounts Committee. You also need to tell what are the reasons for this excess expenditure. And once Public Accounts Committee, by convention, the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee is normally from the opposition political party. You get this excess grants. Okay, great. Now there are two questions for your practice. Question number one: a just republic would reject population-based political representation and tax contribution-based share in federal resources. Justify. That's something that we have discussed in the first article, where delimitation, no further delimitation, which no further increase in the number of seats in Lok Sabha. So population-based political representation should be rejected. And what also should be rejected is the amount of tax we contribute. Basis that we should get share in our federal resource. So this new federal compact has to take place, and that is what will lead to a just republic, in the words of Partha Chatterjee. Question number two: obesity has emerged as a significant public health issue in India. Discuss the key factors contributing to the growing obesity epidemic in India, suggest effective policy measures, including regulatory, educational, and healthcare interventions that can help curb obesity and promote healthier lifestyle for the population. That is it for today. I'll see you again tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the morning. Till then, have a great time. All the best.